What's up, guys? Rob here again with Wilderness Physical Therapy. Tonight, we're going to talk about the components of fitness. There are 7 components of fitness in my eyes. Resistance training, aerobic training, nutrition, balance training, mobility training, sleep, and hydration. So on this episode, we'll talk about resistance training because there's quite a bit to talk about there. In resistance training, there are 5 or 6 principles to follow. The first one being the principle of specificity. So programming with the client's specific goals in mind by targeting specific muscle groups, energy systems, speed of the movement, movement patterns, and or muscle action types. So what that means is you're programming. Someone wants to run a 40-yard dash. You're not going to have them running a marathon to train for the 40-yard dash. Now, that person would benefit from low-intensity aerobic training to help with their recovery heart rate zone, but a lot of their exercises are not going to be long duration exercises. They're going to be doing hang cleans. They're going to be doing deadlifts. They're going to be doing like squats, jump squats, that sort of stuff that elicit the type 2 muscle fibers, the fast twitch muscle fibers. Vice versa, you got someone who wants to run a marathon, you're not going to have them lifting weights 5 days a week, going really heavy with the strength and power training. You're going to have them strength and power train and hypertrophy train, but you're not going to be having them doing it 5 or 6 days a week. They should be in the weight room probably twice a week and running sprints as part of their workout program, but they should not be doing that stuff all the time as the sole mode of exercise for them. The next principle is the overload principle. So training stress should exceed that of the prior workout by changing load, sets, reps, and rest periods. So again, your workout should be changed every 4 to 6 weeks, 4 weeks if you're a highly trained individual. If you've been working out for quite some time, say over a year or so, where you've been going consistently, you need to be changing your workouts every 4 weeks. And having an active rest week in between your workout programs is going to be important for recovery and performance enhancement. So take someone's first, say they've been working out for 2 months. You take then I'm writing them a program for their 3rd month and their 4th month and their 5th month. The program for their 4th month is not going to look the same as the program for the 5th or their 6th month. It should not look the same at all. If that's what's going on if you have a personal trainer or somebody that's running your workouts for you, that needs to be changed. Your weight, if you're doing, say the 4th month is a hypertrophy month, so you're doing 5 sets of 8 the first week, and then you cycle through, and then you go through your 5th month of, let's go, say that one's a power month, so then you change that up for the power training. And then your 6th month, again, you circle back to hypertrophy training. That first week, if you do 4 or 5 sets of 8, that weight should not be the same. You have become much more trained, much stronger since that 4th month. So you should have more weight on the bar or in your hands, on your back, wherever the weight's at. It should be more than what you're doing. You don't always have to change the weight in order to elicit change, changing the rest periods, reducing the rest. That's really going to stress the system, or increasing the rest periods. If you're doing a lot of power training or strength training, increasing your rest periods to sometimes 5 minutes in between each lift. The next principle is a progressive overload. So that is systemic modification of the training program over time in terms of exercise selection and frequency of workouts. This kind of goes back to the overload principle, to where your workout program should progressively become more difficult, but it's not difficult in terms of always adding more weight, increasing the number of exercises. Instead of doing 3 lower body exercises on Monday, you do 5. And instead, you could also switch it up, and you could keep the same 3 exercises. Like in the next program, you could keep, Monday at 3 exercises, and on month 4, that was your only leg day. But now in month 6, you have 2 leg days. So Monday and Thursday are your leg days. So now you're increasing the frequency of the workout for your lower body. You're increasing the overall work of your lower body. So that's going to progress it, or that's going to overload the system more than what it was. So that's going to continue to allow for adaptations. The principle of individuality. So adaptations are unique to each individual. That one, pretty self-explanatory. You and your buddy going to work out, you guys lift the same weight. You're not going to see the same results from that. You both have different training levels. You could even say that if you're both new to training, new to working out, new to resistance training, and you have the same bench press, 1 rep max, all that stuff is the same, you're still going to respond differently to doing 5 sets of 10 at 135, because we're all born with a certain muscle fiber percentage each in the type 1 and type 2. So that leads to the physiological adaptations, that leads to how we respond to the stimulus that is provided. We kind of choose our sports, or we think we choose our sports, but in reality, our body chooses our sports for us. We tend to gravitate towards sports that we're good at. We are born with a certain muscle fiber type percentage of type 1 and type 2. So then people with more type 1 muscle fiber types are going to be more geared towards the aerobic side of, or the long distance, the endurance side of sports. And then folks with the more type 2 muscle fiber types are going to be more towards the power side of sports. So like football, basketball, jumping, any sort of like high jump, that sort of stuff, to where there's a lot of power involved. The next principle is the principle of diminishing returns. So as an individual trains, their progress and gains will be smaller as their body becomes better adapted to the load. So take someone who was in high school, never worked out before. Their first 2 months of working out, they're going to see huge progress. They're going to feel differently. They're going to feel a heck of a lot stronger by the end of the 2 months, as long as their diet's not out of control. But then you take that same individual and then you look at them 6 years down the road, they've been working out consistently still. They're going to have to work a heck of a lot harder to become, or to get stronger and to get any sort of tissue adaptation, due to the fact that their body is now used to a lot of different loading. So they have to be a little more creative in how they load their body to continue to adapt. A good example of this is professional athletes, highly trained military personnel. Their workouts, they have professionals that are designing their workouts because they're so well trained, their body is so well adapted that it takes a very strategic programming method to continue to have that individual see adaptations and see progress from their workouts. And then the final principle is the principle of reversibility. So when you take away the training stimulus, the performance level goes down. So use it or lose it. Talk a little bit more about resistance training. A couple of ways to assess strength. So one way, the most common way, is the 1 rep max. There's the 5 rep max and the 10 rep max. So the 5 and the 10 rep max are the same thing as a 1 rep max, except for you're doing it 5 times or 10 times. There's a lot of shift towards doing a higher rep max versus a 1 rep max because of the chance, that's the word, the chance of injury, the risk of injury with doing a 1 rep max, especially for individuals who have never really worked out before, or they worked out and it's been a while and they get back into it. When you load the body up with that much weight for 1 rep max, it's going to be it might not be a ton of weight. Like someone watching them, like, oh God, that's, they have like 85 pounds on the back for a squat or something. But for that person, that's going to be quite a bit of weight, or it could be quite a bit of weight. If they can only do it one time, their body's not used to that kind of loading. So it introduces the chance of injury. So you start getting up into the 10 rep max, you're no longer really assessing strength because you're training, or that's more in the hypertrophy range. But there's a shift towards that because of the fact that it is less weight, less loading in the body. So it's not as big of a risk for injury. Moving forward, so training parameters, there is strength training, power training, hypertrophy training, and endurance training, all of which have a different set, rep, rest, and loading variable to them. So the first one we're going to talk about is the endurance training. So endurance training, you're going to be doing greater than 3 sets of your given exercise. Your rep range is going to be between 12 and 25 reps. Your rest is going to be less than 30 seconds. Your load is going to be 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max. Now, if you do not do a 1 rep max, you can do a 5 rep max. And then there is a conversion table where you can plug in your 5 rep max and it'll spit out your 1 rep max. So that way you can figure out the 65 to 75% of your 1 rep max. So 1 rep max is a very high intense exercise. A 20 rep max is not a very intense exercise. You know, you could run 5 miles in 30 minutes, right? That's a 6-minute mile. In terms of a workout intensity relationship, it's a very low intensity workout because of the fact that it's like you're able to go for 30 minutes. It's not a sprint where you go for about 10 seconds. Next, we've got hypertrophy training. With hypertrophy training, more than 3 sets, your rep range is going to be between 6 and 12 reps. Your rest is going to be between 30 and 90 seconds. And your loading volume is going to be 65 to 85% of your 1 rep max. So it's a pretty moderate volume to a pretty moderate intensity exercise as far as the relationship there. The hypertrophy training. So hypertrophy is to get bigger. So this is a pretty standard area to start off with. If someone is pretty new to working out, to resistance training, I will typically have them do 1 or 2 weeks of the endurance training where they have a rep range, you know, they're doing 1 or 2 sets of 20 to maybe 30 reps just to get used to the movements, get used to the exercises. And then I'll kick them into the hypertrophy training. I'll have them do that for a couple of weeks. So they really start to load up the bar a little bit, or load up the weight, but they're not trying to move it quickly. They're not trying to move a ton of weight. That's a nice introduction to the movements. The next training style is the strength training. So you're going to have, again, greater than 3 sets. Your rep range is going to be between 1 and 6. Your rest is going to be between 2 to 5 minutes. That is very key as far as letting the energy system that you're training recover completely, so that way it's ready for the next set. The loading is going to be greater than 85% of your 1 rep max, and is a relatively low volume to a high intensity relationship as far as the weight to reps go. So you're really loading up the bar, you're doing a ton of weight. You're not too worried about how quickly the weight moves. So with the power training, you're gonna have 3 to 6 sets. You're gonna have 1 to 6 reps, and your rest time again is 2 to 5 minutes. So right now it's looking like it's quite similar to it, or it's very similar to the strength training. But here's where the difference is at: the load. So the load is going to be 30 to 70% of your 1 rep max. And the volume to intensity relationship is a relatively low volume to a high intensity. So with the power training, you are really trying to move that weight quickly, whether it's a hang clean, a power clean, hang snatch, power snatch, box jumps, squat jumps. You're really trying to move that weight at a very high rate to develop that power. And I'll touch on this with the aerobic training side of things too, but with the there are 3 energy systems that the body uses to function. The first one, the aerobic training system. So it uses fat as energy. The next one is the anaerobic training system. So that uses carbs as the main fuel source. And then there's the phosphocreatine system. So that uses creatine as the main fuel source. With the endurance training, you're typically going to be seeing longer periods of being time under tension. So the aerobic system is going to be the one that's challenged with that. You don't really think of training the aerobic system with weight training. So that's why I use this as an introductory. It's a nice 1 to 2 week thing where people can get used to the movement, but then I don't really have them doing that a whole lot because you can train aerobically with true aerobic training equipment. Next is the hypertrophy training. So this is where you're going to kind of run into the anaerobic training. So you're using carbs as most of the energy system here. And then the strength and the power training, this is where you use most of the creatine for fuel here. So creatine, when I was going through high school, there was this huge thing on creatine. Like, don't take it. It's hard on your kidneys. It's hard. You have to drink a ton of water because it dehydrates you, but you get a ton stronger using it. Totally. It's all debunked. Creatine is a fuel source, or it's a fuel source. It is the most researched supplement out there. It is one of the cheapest supplements out there. If you get a good quality creatine, You take it, you're not going to feel a ton stronger right away. Like it's something that takes time to build up. It's not something that you take it and you're like, man, I'm freaking jacked. Like I can go lift a school bus. No, that's not how it works. You can either take it, you can cycle on and cycle off, where, and I forget the ratio. I want to say it's like uh, 20 grams a day or 30 grams a day. I'd have to double check, so don't quote me on that. You do that for 5 days and you're good for a month. And you do it again like the first week of the month and the first week of the month. And you just take, like, you just load it up like that. Or you can do a little bit at a time where you take 5 grams a day. So you just, it's sometimes you can get them flavored. So you can just put in your coffee. You can put it with your protein. It's a very safe supplement. But with that, that is the creatine system is for activity under 20 to 30 seconds. So that's where the creatine, like supplementing with creatine, would come into play. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening.